Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the Amateur Hour podcast. My name is Adam Thomas. In this episode, we're going to be talking a little more about Star Trek Picard and some responses to some other YouTube videos. We're going to be talking a little video game news, some of the controversies of last week, and we're going to close out talking about that anime I mentioned in our episode 0. So get ready to listen to some assholes talk about random crap from the internet. So, Star Trek Picard. I just want to make it clear that I've only seen episode 1, so things could probably get better with it. I hope to sit down and actually watch the other episodes coming up, but that'll probably be a while. I did see a video by Lore Reloaded entitled, "Was Starfleet Ever Truly Not Racist?" I agreed with some of what he said in the video. It was pretty well done. But there were a few minor points here and there that I was like, He brought up the Romulans during the Deep Space Nine Dominion War arc and how they had built a weaponized base in the Bajoran system, and it took the Federation threatening to possibly go to war with the Romulans to remove this base. And that being a reason that perhaps the Federation and the Starfleet was not living up to their ideals. One of the things in that episode was that the Bajorans didn't want that base there either. And everybody kind of knew the writing on the wall that, possibly the Romulans would not be able to be removed from this. So it wasn't like the Romulans had approached the Bajorans and said, hey, we want to put this base here, and the Bajorans had agreed to it, and then the Federation stepped in and said, oh, no. No, the Bajorans themselves, in Bajoran territory, did not want this base. Or at least that's what my remembrance of the episode being, is that a lot of what was here, the Federation didn't want that there either, but I think a lot of what went down in that episode with the Federation becoming involved was largely because, hey, the Bajorans didn't want it there either. So we can't say that they were completely out of touch with this way of thinking. Lore then goes on to show how the reporter was using kind of loaded questions and compares it to fake news. Again, I don't like to get political in these podcasts, but I will say I agree with him largely on this. I think they did a pretty good job reminding at least me of what it's like to turn on cable news, whether you're watching MSNBC, CNN, Fox, pick your poison, how the reporters on those networks push for their agenda rather than just saying, on today such and such happened and letting you kind of make up your mind. It's very edgy and forceful for their view of how things go. So in that fake news, loaded questions, I think Lore did a pretty good job, even though I don't really see the point on how that relates to Starfleet being racist or not. The next issue that he brings up is that the Federation or Starfleet will often throw people, or at least not hesitate to throw people under the bus. Now, he gives several examples of this, but I don't think they were necessarily fair examples of Starfleet. The first one that he mentioned was how in Star Trek VI, Starfleet left Kirk and McCoy to the tender mercies of the Klingon Empire. Now, I don't think that's a fair comparison. Kirk and McCoy were captured by the Klingons after they beamed over to the Klingon ship and they were put on what was a show trial. Lore does not mention that in one scene of that movie, Starfleet and the President of the Federation were actually planning a rescue mission to retrieve Kirk and McCoy from the Klingons when it came down from the Klingon Chancellor that any attempt at rescue or extradition or whatever retrieval would be an act of war. So Starfleet was then put in a difficult position. Do we rescue Kirk and McCoy? Two Starfleet officers, which from Starfleet's point of view, remember, we as the audience know Kirk and McCoy are innocent. Starfleet doesn't. They're getting mixed reports. Nobody can explain exactly what happened. From Starfleet's point of view, Kirk and or McCoy could be easily responsible for all of this. They don't know that Kirk is innocent. In fact, Kirk was vehement in his assignment to the task that he didn't want to help the Klingons. So from Starfleet's point of view, these two guys could be guilty. I'm not saying Starfleet believed them to be guilty, but they could be. They were not positively innocent in all of this. So to leave them at the mercy of the Klingons, given that at least Kirk quite possibly could have fired on the Klingon ship, and even then we didn't get what the Federation and Starfleet response to that was going to be. The crew of the Enterprise took it among themselves to go and rescue Kirk and McCoy of their own accord. We didn't know if that rescue mission was going to proceed, if it was going to be changed, if other channels were going to be pursued. The events didn't play out to know whether Starfleet was going to just leave them or not. So I don't think that's exactly a fair comparison. The next example that Lore gives is one that I largely agree with the Maquis, citizens of the Federation being more or less sacrificed to have their peace treaty with the Cardassian Union. That I'm a lot more sympathetic of. Starfleet was in a war, and Starfleet did not want to pursue that war, and they made a bad deal. They should have, I don't want to say forced the Cardassians to accept their terms, but the Federation was fully capable of executing a war at that time against a power that seems to be as weak as the Cardassian Union of that time period. They could have really pressed the Cardassians to sue for peace and accept the terms that the Federation had for them. Now, would that have played out differently? I don't know, but I do have a lot of sympathy for the Maquis. At the same time, the Federation is a big place. So, in a way, the Maquis are being somewhat unreasonable than to just relocate. They could move their settlements, they could come within the borders of the Federation, or possibly part of the Federation that is more unexplored if they're pioneers. So, in my view with that, yes, the Federation, the Starfleet did wrong the people of the Maquis, but at the same time, the Maquis aren't saying, okay, well, we don't want this destructive conflict to continue, and we're willing to move on and possibly make some sacrifices for the Federation. In my view, there's plenty of blame for that to go around. So, with that, largely, yes, with Lore, I agree, but I think it's a little more complicated than them just being left to that. Lore, next example is how the Cardassians invaded Bajor and subjugated its people, and how the Federation just sort of left them to it. Lore criticizes Starfleet's decision, saying that somehow one government invading another government is an internal matter. Well, in this I have to disagree. One government invading another government is an internal matter. It's not that Bajor was part of the Federation, so the Federation was not attacked. We don't know for certain exactly what Bajor's political connection to the Federation was before that invasion. We don't know what Bajor did with the Federation as far as requesting assistance in dealing with the Cardassian Union or asking the Federation for protection. It didn't seem like that happened. With that, I would say that yes, that's a matter to be resolved between Bajor and the Cardassians. The Federation did not have a political right to interfere there. Did they have a humanitarian right, given what we, the viewers, know the Cardassians were doing to the Bajorans? Yes. And should the Federation have intervened when it became obvious that the Bajorans were being enslaved and killed? Probably a little more complicated than that. It would have been an excellent excuse if the Bajorans themselves had asked for Starfleet and Federation assistance, and Starfleet had this proof of saying, yes, look, the Bajorans are being brutalized, we are going to step in and assist them because they asked for that assistance. But we don't know that the Bajorans asked for assistance. From Kira's reaction to the Federation showing up in the first few episodes of Deep Space Nine, I would think that at least some of the Bajorans did not ask and did not want Federation or Starfleet assistance. So we don't know how widespread that reaction to the Federation was, but yes, if it played out that the Cardassians invaded the Bajorans did not have close ties with the Federation was not aware or did not have open proof of the brutalization of the Bajorans, and the Bajorans didn't ask for assistance, I would say yes, that's an internal matter between the Bajorans and the Cardassians. It is not a matter that has to do with the Federation. The Federation cannot get involved in a dispute between two governments just because they don't like one of the governments. That's not fair on the Federation. Yes, if the Bajorans had requested assistance, and if the Federation knew and had some kind of proof of the way the Bajorans were being brutalized, yes, the Federation should have stepped in and stopped it. If the Bajorans did not ask for assistance, the Federation didn't have close ties to the Bajorans, then that's something that the Bajorans and the Cardassians have to figure out for themselves until the Bajorans ask for and are granted Federation assistance. Lore's next example is how the Federation tried to make peace with the Dominion over and over and over. I'm not sure how that's really relevant at all. The Federation tries to make peace with everyone, and that's one of the good things about the Federation. They exhaust every avenue before they fall back to armed conflict. I think that's admirable. Is it always practical? No. Has it got the Federation and Starfleet into trouble being overly diplomatic? Yes. But it's still something to strive for. As far as who needed help with the Dominion situation, the people that were being oppressed by the Dominion, internal citizens of the Dominion. Lore's made such a big deal about how the Federation was antagonistic towards the Dominion, and then now is kind of saying no, that they should have sparked conflict of the Dominion because they weren't assisting people. Again, that's an internal matter for the Dominion if he's referring to how the Dominion was overlording over people within the Dominion. We have instances where Starfleet, or at least Starfleet officers, attempted to assist citizens of the Dominion or people that the Dominion had brutalized, like Bashir trying to assist the people that the Dominion had infected with a virus or some type of biological weapon. We never found really a conclusion to that. Found some kind of inoculation to save the next generation, to eventually eliminate this pestilence that had been put on them. And that episode closed out with him trying to still find a cure to save the people that were still alive. We never found out if he made that cure or those people were saved, but at least the civilization was saved. And was that just Bashir? Yes. I mean, we don't know that Starfleet had any official involvement in that. We never found out if they assigned some scientists to assist him or anything. Maybe it was in a novel somewhere, but I don't remember ever seeing it in the show or in the few things that I have read outside of the show and movies. So with that, we don't know. From what we saw in the episode, they didn't stop Bashir. They allowed Bashir to use Federation equipment, Federation knowledge, Federation resources, and if nothing else, allowed him to pursue his pet project to help these people. So there is some evidence to that Starfleet is even willing to, at the very least, turn a blind eye to their officers assisting people that is outside Federation jurisdiction. And out of all of these examples, Lore is using analogies that I don't think fit very well. And this is why. With all of these examples, there have been multiple governments, bodies involved. There hasn't been something that was purely an external issue. And by that I mean these were all conflicts or wars or disagreements. What we're dealing with the Romulan situation is not a war. It's not a political move. It is a natural disaster. Okay? The star going supernova, at least to our knowledge, wasn't caused by someone. It wasn't a war, it wasn't an invasion, it wasn't people being accused of a crime. It was a natural disaster. So what we have here is that the Federation has a long history of assisting people that are facing a natural disaster. We have multiple episodes where the Federation has stepped in and, at the request of a warp-capable species, is coming in and saying, okay, you're facing this natural disaster and we're going to go out of our way to try to assist you. All right? We have a few kind of inklings of that in TOS. In the Next Generation, I remember two very specific examples of where the Federation stepped in to assist people who had requested assistance with a natural disaster. There may be more. Again, I'm not sitting here with the encyclopedia open, but there was the episode where Q was losing his powers. He was rejected by the Q continuum, and he was a human. In that episode, the Enterprise had been dispatched to a planet where the moon was coming out of its orbit. I forget if it was going to crash into the planet or if it just, for whatever reason, the moon had left its orbit, and that was causing just tremendous damage to the planet itself. And the Enterprise was tasked with assisting them in any way they could. During the show, they were trying to find some kind of way to return the moon to its proper orbit. Now, at the end of the episode, spoiler alert for, probably a 20-year-old episode at this point, but Q regains his powers, and is one of his gifts, I suppose, to the crew of the Enterprise for assisting him in his time of need was to return the moon to its proper orbit. The people were happy. They contacted the Enterprise and said, we don't know how you did it, but thank you for your help. You saved us all. Picard and everyone's confused. The moon is back in its orbit. Well, Q did that. But my point is that the Federation had sent its flagship to assist these people with their natural disaster because they requested it. Another example that I can give that I don't remember quite as well as that one, the Enterprise had been sent to a planet that was suffering from a disease, or I don't remember exactly what was going on there, but it was a natural disaster. It wasn't an invasion or something like that. And it was the one where Troy's mother falls in love with a guy, and you find out that at the end, their culture demanded that he end his own life because he was getting too old. And that one, again, it was a small part of the episode, but we see that the Federation is sending its assets to assist people in facing a natural disaster. So I challenge lore to, again, point out an issue of where the Federation turned its back on people who are facing a natural disaster and requesting assistance and refusing that assistance. I can't think right off the top of my head of any episode in Star Trek where the Federation and Starfleet has turned their back on someone when they were facing a natural disaster or a plague or something to that nature, where the people requested assistance and the Federation was like, no, that's too much trouble. With the Romulans, we know that the Romulans asked for Federation help. Okay, Picard makes that very clear in the interview. Romulans ask the Federation for assistance. As far as the Federation being racist towards the Romulans, I would say that it's wrong, that clearly elements of the Federation are somewhat racist against the Romulans, but at the same time, it's not exactly an unnatural reaction. Okay, the first war that humanity faced during its space exploration that we're aware of, its first real conflict, was with the Romulans. We see that in Enterprise, humanity is branching out to the stars. We have an issue with the Xindi, with the super attack on Earth and that entire storyline. But the first breakout, straight-up war that humanity faces wasn't with the Klingons, wasn't with the Xindi, wasn't with the Cardassians, it was with the Romulans. And from all reports that we see, that was a brutal, brutal conflict. And it was with an enemy that we don't have very much information about in the shows. I know there's a bunch of books and all that we don't see it in the shows other than the fact that it affected the Federation all the way up to TOS era, that this conflict had been brutal. The next time the humans encounter the Romulans are sneaking across the neutral zone, breaking their treaty, killing their people, and seeing what they can get away with. It's not like the Romulans, declared war and attacked the Federation. Again, the Romulans were being sneaky. So there's yet another negative experience that the humans, and at that point Starfleet, had with the Romulans. Throughout TOS, we have the Romulans being mysterious and dangerous, and the Federation committing Captain Kirk and the Enterprise in what I think is a crazy plan to somehow steal the Romulan cloaking device. But at the same time, the Federation was facing sort of how the Romulans face in the Next Generation. If what the fans have kind of agreed on, and what's been kind of in everyone's headcanon, that there was some type of Romulan-Klingon alliance, that would have been a very, very big threat to the Federation. To not only have the Klingon Empire, which seemed to be able at that time to stand up to the Federation point for point, and then throw in the Romulans and give the Romulans and Klingons cloaking technology on top of it, it feels like the Federation was pushed its back to the wall and had to take some kind of action to try to rebalance the scales. So taking some kind of action, I can understand that. The action that they took was crazy, to say the least. But again, it was a desperate time, and they had to try to counter this technology that possibly both their enemies could possess, that could have been devastating to them. Then the Romulans disappear. We see them very briefly in the movies, in Star Trek V, with planet that they were supposed to co-develop with the Klingons, the Romulans, and the Federation, but we don't really see how Starfleet, Federation, Romulan diplomatic involvement is going. We do know that the Romulan ambassador was involved in the plot to destabilize the relations with the Klingons and the Federation. So again, we have the Romulans being involved trying to stop peace. In TNG, when we see them again, they just appear out of nowhere. This 70 years of peace or so that they remarked that the Romulans have been laying low and haven't really taken any action. The first thing that happens is the Romulans show themselves and make kind of a veiled threat, we're back and we're going to be involved. Well, whenever the Romulans have done that, it's been bad for the Federation. Going forward, there was a very antagonistic conflict, Cold War. Cold War is a good way of saying it, between the Federation and the Romulans, all the way up to the Dominion War. And in the Dominion War, the Federation was aware that the Romulans were sort of, yes, they were in the war to protect the Romulans' interests, but there was always this kind of, they're not in the war necessarily because they want to be in the war and they want to join this alliance. They're in the war because they know eventually that the Dominion's going to turn its sights on the Romulan Empire. And if the Romulans can't withstand the Federation and Klingons, who are getting trounced by the Dominion, what chance does the Romulan Empire have against the Dominion? So they're serving their own self-interests. It's not like we saw the Romulans calm down and sign a peace treaty and an alliance similar to the Khitomer Accords with the Federation after Deep Space Nine. It seems like everything kind of went back to the way it was, with this Cold War spy game going on between the Romulans and the Federation. So fast forward again and to Nemesis, with the Romulans being taken over by the Remans and the Shizan incident. And what do we have? We have yet again the Romulans inviting the Federation in and more or less betraying them. And we find out that the Romulan leader, as illegitimate as he might have been, was planning on annihilating Earth. So to say that the Federation is distrusting of the Romulans and that Federation citizens are a bit racist towards them, yes. Yes, they are. But I would argue that the Romulans have given Starfleet, the Federation, and the people of the Federation absolutely no reason to trust them. They have shown time and time and time again that they are an enemy, that they are an insidious enemy. They are an enemy that cannot be trusted, to keep their word and behave in a quote unquote civilized manner. So, in that way, I would say yes, that parts of the Federation and Starfleet are racist against the Romulans. Is it right? No, but it is understandable. And how Picard would have been surprised by that, yes, I can see how he would be, and how we as the viewers might be a little surprised by it, given the history of how the Federation has always gone to assist the other races with natural disasters. And in this, we saw that they were attempting to. They were building a fleet of ships to go assist the Romulans with their natural disaster. Now, let's compare the Federation's response to the Romulan supernova to the Klingons' natural disaster, well, sort of natural disaster, of the Praxis moon exploding and damaging the Klingon homeworld. In that, the Federation was quick to render assistance. They weren't interested in pursuing their bitter rivalry with the Klingon Empire. They were very willing to quickly put things aside. There were a few that, vehemently disagreed and said that no, we shouldn't put these issues aside. But for the most part, it seemed like the Federation was willing to say, okay, well, we've been at war with the Klingons for off and on for 100 years or more. So, and they were willing to just kind of bury the hatchet with that. I mean, that's really the difference in how the Federation responded to one enemy and another. So, no, I don't agree that this has always been a problem. I think Lore has a point, but the examples that he's using to make that point is not a fair set of examples. This was not a war. This was not something that involved more than one nation. This was a natural disaster with not just an enemy of the Federation, but the enemy of the Federation. The people that had, since the beginning of manned space exploration, as in warp drive, that had been more or less at war with United Earth all the way up to the founding of the Federation, all the way up till Deep Space Nine, and at the end of Deep Space Nine, the war with the Dominion had withdrawn to their borders and resumed, as far as we can tell, their Cold War with the Federation. And still, the Federation was willing to heed their call for assistance and come to their aid. Now, some people have made the argument that the Federation shouldn't have needed to assist the Romulan Empire, that the Romulans were fully capable of taking care of themselves. I would argue, no, that's not exactly true. This was their home system. It would have, moving the entire population of their home star system of both Romulus, Remus, and planets, asteroid bases, all of that all at once. And we have to also remember that not too terribly long before these events, the Romulan government was destroyed. In Nemesis, we saw the entire Romulan government be destroyed. All of those senators, all of those high-ranking officials were killed and replaced with Shinzan. So we don't know exactly what happened after the events of Nemesis, but it's fully possible that the Romulans fought at least an internal civil war, because their slave race, the Remans, had risen up and taken power. So we don't know all of the internal mechanics that took place to resolve that issue. We don't know if it was resolved. The Romulans could have had a active civil war going on at the time that the star went supernova. It's not said in any of the episodes. So to say that the Romulans were fully capable of moving their own people at the time, they might not have been in that position. They may have been internally involved in a civil war, or facing the aftermath of a civil war, or at least reestablishing government control after all of the high-ranking members of their former government were assassinated. So internal turmoil in the Romulan Empire might have led to their inability to service their own people. So that's just my thought on that. I don't think that it's an oversight to say that the Romulans weren't able to take care of their own people. I do think that one line of dialogue in an episode could have explained this. Picard's housekeepers could have just said a line of dialogue like, they don't know about the dark times following the traitor Shizan, or the civil war that was going on. It just, one little throwaway line in there while they were watching the interview could have laid all of that to bed. That there was this conflict or whatever was stopping the Romulans from relocating their people. And on a side note, I saw a video from Anti-Trekker today that said that he's been going through some knee replacement surgery and is in pain. We'll be bringing other people onto his channel to make videos. I don't feel that I'm in a position just starting off to offer any assistance there, but I do want to say to the Anti-Trekker, I understand pain. I face some of it myself. My father goes through pain issues. I fully understand, man. I hope you the best. Like anybody else, I like a lot of what you have to say. I don't agree with everything, but man, I hope you feel better, and I hope you can come back to YouTube and really start banging it out again. I really enjoy your videos and hope you feel better soon. I don't know what it is with companies recently. With everything that's been going down with Fallout 76, and just watching a lot of companies that represented my childhood just crash and burn. Things from Kmart to Toys R Us to just, the retail collapse in general. And then you see video game companies and video game businesses just wanting to, I don't know, it seems like somewhere out there's like this great video game industry suicide pact somewhere. Because you have Bethesda, the company that their games were just beloved with Fallout and Elder Scrolls, these beautiful games that they made that admittedly had their problems. I'm not going to say that Bethesda was perfect. I've played Daggerfall. Bethesda is not perfect. But, they used to seem like they give a crap. And then the whole Fallout 76, I as a gamer, Fallout 76 is an embarrassment. As somebody that enjoys having a conversation, I love Fallout 76. Fallout 76 is the joke that just keeps on giving. It's not that it's just, you make a bad game, you make fun of it, you move on, that's it. Like, Fallout 76 was one of those things, it's like, it just keeps coming back. As soon as you think, oh, it can't get any worse than this, Fallout 76 finds a way. But what I'm here to talk about right now is last week with the kind of news that was coming out about Blizzard and Warcraft 3 reforged or refunded, as I've seen some memes going around, and Nintendo's Pokemon Home. So I'll start with the latter first. I have been accused of and understand why people say that I'm a Nintendo fanboy. To a degree, I would say yes. I like Nintendo. Part of that is because I'm a kid of the 80s. You could say, I'm going home to play Nintendo. I don't think I said I was playing video games until I was a teenager. You went home and you played Nintendo. I had a Nintendo. Everybody that had a gaming console that I knew they might have had other things too. Like, ColecoVision, Sega Master System, Sega Genesis, but virtually everybody I knew that had a video game system had a Nintendo. So there is some nostalgia there that Nintendo saved the video game industry, and that's debatable, but I don't think anybody can deny that what Nintendo achieved in the 80s was that it was remarkable. I don't think anybody would argue that it was something that Nintendo achieved that was remarkable. And I've liked Nintendo IPs ever since. I've said, to my knowledge, that Nintendo themselves, Nintendo internally, has never made a shitty game. They've made games that are good, masterpieces like, in my opinion, Mario Brothers 3, Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past is my favorite Zelda game, and I would say probably one of my favorite video games of all time, if not the best video game of all time. I know that that's That's just for me personally. There's plenty of people out there that will argue other ones, and I'm not dead set on that, but it's certainly one of the best video games of all time. I've never seen a first-party Nintendo game that I thought was utter garbage. They've all had, some have been not so great, but they've all had some mark of quality. So I'm somewhat willing to stand by Nintendo that, yes, they've done a bunch of really shitty things, and I'm not here to list them all because, I mean, frankly, listing all of the shitty things that Nintendo has done would take all day. I will criticize, at some point I'll make a video where I do nothing but trash talk Nintendo. But I do cut them a little more slack given their track history for success and to some degree for quality and nostalgia factor. I am not a big Pokemon fan. I was a little too old for that when Pokemon came out. I am aware of Pokemon because of certain things. I have some Pikachus around at all times. So I'm not a big Pokemon fan, but I fully understand why some people are. I have played a little bit of Pokemon here and there. I played a little bit of, I don't remember if it was Red or Blue back in the day, but I originally played some of that and thought, alright. And then Pokemon Yellow came out, and I played a good chunk of that, mostly because it had Pikachu, so that I could play the cute character from the show that was on at the time. And then I kind of left it at Pokemon Yellow for a long time when I was going to some parties in college. We would go over to his friend's house and everybody would get drunk. I was sort of the guy that kept everybody else out of trouble. I won't say that I didn't drink at all, but I didn't drink very much. And his sister had Pokemon, I think it was Pokemon Stadium for N64. So when everybody was drinking and partying after everybody was kind of like, not in danger of jumping off the balcony or something anymore, I would chill out with her and she would trounce me in Pokemon Stadium. So I played that some, and a few minutes of different games here and there, and I've never beaten a Pokemon game. To that, I do know people that are huge into Pokemon, that love Pokemon. And the way that Nintendo has handled Pokemon, I think, is getting worse and worse. This constant, we're going to come out with 2 games, you're going to have to buy both games, and adding so many Pokemon to what is available is I think that part of the problem is just in the sheer number of Pokemon there are and the difficulty of balancing all of this. At the same time, you can't promise people a new Pokemon game with character models, with new animations, with new this, new that, and then not deliver on it. Pokemon Sword and Shield, I've seen all the comparisons of people saying these are literally the same models that were in the DS versions, that were in the Game Boy versions, that have just been copied and pasted and brought forward. And nothing in Pokemon, aside for a few little gimmicks, has changed. I'm kind of with Jim Sterling on this. Start from the ground up. Say, this is a different land. It has different Pokemon. Here are you a brand new 100, 150, 200 Pokemon, and not have any of the old ones available. If you can't do it right, then give a new, good experience. And then later on, if you want to start bringing the older Pokemon in and say, hey, look, these are old character models, blah, 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 you're up front with people, then sure, yeah. But either do the game right and take the time that you need and come out with the game that does everything that it's supposed to do, or wipe it out, do a soft reboot, with new Pokemon. Don't redesign the old ones. Come out with new ones and have the game based around those new Pokemon. Charging people $16 a year to carry their Pokemon forward from all these different platforms, and then you can only have 30 of them if it's free, and you can transfer from one game but not back, and it's a mess. It is a mess. You are charging $60 for the game, so that's basically, I'm sure you can get them a little bit cheaper, but you're looking at about $120 for both games, then $30 a piece for the DLC. Then now you have to have the Nintendo subscription and this on top of it, this is just getting insane. And if that's, if you have to charge more money, and I've said this many, many times, then just be straightforward with people. If you have a good reputation, people will listen. If you have someone come out on stage, like CD Projekt Red, or Capcom to some degree, or one of the other companies that are still around that's known for quality, and say, hey, look, guys, look, we put a lot of time and effort into this game. It's going to be an awesome game, but we just can't let it go for $60. It's just, it's a huge game. It's going to do X, Y, Z for you, and it's going to cost $80. We're sorry, but it's $80, or it's $100, or whatever. You just say how much the game is going to be. You be honest with people. And it's not like there's no precedent for this in history. There have been games that have cost more than the typical game at the time. I mean, what? Final Fantasy, here again where we come to the US and that. Well, Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy III for Super Nintendo was an expensive game when it came out. It was not the typical price of a game when it was released to retailers. Yet it was still a successful game. If you make a good quality product and you are honest with your customer base, then people will reward you for that. That's all it takes. I mean, look at The Witcher 3. It had expansions to the game. Call it DLC. That's kind of what it goes by now. But these were old school expansions to games. And CD Projekt Red was kind of honest about it. And they've been rewarded for it. There's my problems with CD Projekt Red, like I do virtually anybody. But, for the most part, I've enjoyed Project CD Red's work. And if with what's going on with the delay with Cyberpunk, that's saying that Miyamoto said that a delayed game is eventually good, but a bad game is bad forever. I might have got that quote a little bit wrong, but you get the idea. That's very true. Just be honest. And that honesty is a lot of the problems that we're facing in the video game industry today. Going back to Blizzard, Blizzard was another company that was just a legendary company when I was growing up. Warcraft 1. Was it the first real-time strategy game? No. But it was one of the first real-time strategy games that was popular. Warcraft 2 brought more people into real-time strategy games than anything I had seen before. And I had Warcraft 1. StarCraft. There was a reason that StarCraft was played as an esport. StarCraft 1, I would say, was a masterpiece of gaming. I played that game to exhaustion. And to see what Bethesda has done with Warcraft 3, the Reforged, is frankly embarrassing. It is embarrassing. It was bad enough, my point of view, and from the point of view of other real-time strategy fans, to see Blizzard transition from, we're going to release these epic games that are classics that are masterpieces in their own way, to World of Warcraft. We're just, screw everything else, we're just going to do World of Warcraft. And I don't know about too many other people, but I distinctly remember the announcement of StarCraft 2, where the Terran Marine, that we would come later to know, but the Terran Marine came out and said, hell, it's about time. I was like, hey, I'm a man, I'll admit it, I had a bit of a tear in my eye. I was like, oh, the legend returns, that's going to change everything. And to see them fail so utterly and completely and for no good reason. I mean, all you had to do to make Warcraft 3 a success, really, was just re-release it. Which is more or less what they've done, but if you had just said, hey, we're going to re-release Warcraft 3, we're going to touch it up a bit, and we're going to make sure that it runs well on modern systems. We're going to price it at $20 or something, for an old game like that. I think that would have been successful, and they would have been fine with it. The problem with all of these companies that I've seen is honesty. And that's really a problem that I've seen in the past couple of years. Just honesty. We all have seen Angry Joe has gone on and on about corporate speak And there's a reason that Jim Sterling's little creature of AAA game publishers is that little creature. It's the perception that they've done because so few video game companies have been honest with us. EA, I think, is still one of the most hated companies in the world, and rightfully so. And as much as I hate Konami for what they've done with some of my classic childhood franchises, Castlevania, Metal Gear, all their classic beat-em-up games. Konami used to be a giant, and for them to come out and say the future of gaming is pachinko machines and mobile apps, hey, they slapped me in the face with that. But at least they had the balls to tell me to my face and slap me in the face. EA, Blizzard, Bethesda, they're lying to your face. The meme that's now 16 times the detail. It all just works. And then now with Blizzard showing demo of what looks to be, don't get me wrong, Warcraft 3 was not my favorite Warcraft. I'll still say, hey, Warcraft 2 was my favorite. We can fight over it later. But Warcraft 3 was a good game, and to come out and have it look really nice and good cutscenes and sell it like that as, oh, look how beautiful we're going to do this game, and then to release it in the state that it's been released in, you're straight up lying to people, and that's unacceptable. And I, like a lot of other fans of Blizzard, had our reservations about the Activision thing. We had a lot of worries about it, and we kind of shoved our head in the sand and said, no, Blizzard prints money. Activision would have to be out of their mind to change anything at Blizzard. Blizzard is just a money cow. Just buy it, leave it alone, and collect your check each month. That's all Activision had to do. And this clearly reeks of Activision. I can't imagine that the people that released Warcraft 2 and StarCraft released this Warcraft 3 Reforged. It stinks of a suit coming in and going, no, you're not going to do that. We won't make enough money. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of falling into corporate commander there, but this is a problem that needs to be solved. And sadly, I think companies are going to die because of it. Because let's be honest, if Blizzard had been honest with us from the beginning, if they had come out on stage and said, hey, we're going to re-release Warcraft 3, we're just going to do basically what they did, and been honest, I don't think it would have been a controversy. I think people would have been like, yeah, that kind of sucks. People would have complained about it. People on YouTube would have talked about it. But in the end, I don't think there would be this anger that we're facing. This hatred that we're facing. This revulsion that we're facing. People would have just been, oh, that kind of sucks, and moved on. So, yeah, it's just sad to see. I'm afraid that we're going to lose so much coming up. We've watched stuff like Kmart and Toys R Us go. There's some doubt these days whether GameStop's even going to make it to the next generation consoles. I think they will, barely, but I don't know how much life they have beyond that. Will they disappear completely? No, they'll file bankruptcy and restructure and continue on as a zombie for a little while. But we're going to lose a lot of these places. We're going to eventually BioWare. BioWare might be the next one on the chopping block. EA has zero tolerance for developers not somehow making the crazy stuff that EA wants to work. These two controversies over the past week have just been, sadly, I think, the mark of the future. A sad, sad, sad foretelling of even worse things to come. Hopefully that's not a black pill. Hopefully they can surprise me, and the next project that Blizzard comes out with will be freaking awesome. Nintendo turns their shit around and maybe goes to the Pokemon company and says, all right, no, you're hurting us on this. No, we're going to step in and we're going to do something to fix this. The same thing with their mobile crap, giving Nintendo a bad name. Maybe the Big N will step in and be like, no, we're not letting these legacies go down the tubes because you want things over monetized. Maybe they'll step in and do something. I doubt it. It seems like once companies start this slide, there's virtually no way to save it, but we can always hope. And if not, we'll look for those new developers coming out, those new guys that have passion in their projects and maybe some of the little developers, some of the indie developers will make the names for themselves and move on to replace some of these dinosaurs to get away from these publishers and other suits that are making this decision that is just looking at it not as a long-term can the company survive and thrive, but as a how big can I get my bonus check at the end of this quarter. So we can always hope. And in the meantime, shame. Shame on you, Nintendo. Get your shit together. And Blizzard, I don't know who's responsible for that, but fire them and get back to the business of making legendary games. Let's see the next StarCraft, the next Warcraft 2, the next StarCraft 2. Let's make Warcraft 4 and make it something that we talk about 20 years from now. In 2040, let's have people look back at Warcraft 4 and StarCraft 3 and think, damn, those were epic. So during editing of this podcast, Digital Trends published an article showing that Blizzard has begun refunding people, but only if they're requesting their refund due to technical issues. It looks like if you go in and you're not pleased with the game, you can report it for technically not working due to its many bugs, such as being unable to join custom games and loading screen issues, and get your money back that way, which is in a way terrible. I mean, it works fine for getting your money back on a broken piece of shit game, but in a way it sucks because you can't voice your true displeasure of Blizzard not doing its job. And then to make matters even worse, Blizzard came out with a statement that reads like it was written by a corporate lawyer. It acknowledges nothing of what Blizzard did. It basically puts the blame on the consumer, on the gamer, saying, we're sorry you didn't have the experience that you wanted. It's not like the gamer had some kind of crazy expectation. People were upset because the game doesn't match what it was marketed as. This is just more and more proof that Blizzard and these companies just don't care about honesty anymore. The suits getting involved, and rather than admitting their mistakes and moving forward, just want to push blame on someone else to make sure that there cannot be any type of legal action or that their reputation isn't stained, not realizing that what they're doing is staining their reputation far worse than saying, mistakes were made, we did this wrong, we're going to make it right, and then making it right. It's just a waste. It's sad to see. It really is. So, what I've been watching in anime. I've been watching anime really ever since the 90s. I saw my first anime on the Sci-Fi channel, and I've been somewhat hooked ever since. Now, I'm not what you would call a super anime expert, but I do like to put one in once in a while, and recently I've been watching an anime called Keijo. Keijo is your typical sports story with a twist. It's the same story of a bunch of underdog misfits learning to work together to take down the champions. In the show, the sport itself, Keijo, is played in a pool. Anchored in this pool is a floating structure they call a land. Now, the point of the sport is to knock your opponents either off of the land or to make them touch the land with something other than their feet. To do this, however, you can only use your chest or your butt. Now, if you haven't figured it out yet, only women play this sport. And I know what you're thinking. This is just an excuse to show women in skimpy bathing suits rubbing their boobs and butts all over each other. And into that, yeah, there is a little bit of that in the show, but you would be surprised how much of the anime is based around the idea of training for a sport. During most of the show, the women characters aren't in bikinis. They're in one-piece bathing suits, which are surprisingly not that revealing. Now, they do show close-ups of butts and cleavage, but there is no nudity in the show. I was really surprised how serious the show took its training and sports aspect. The show makes a big deal out of all the training and sacrifices that professional athletes have to make to be the best in their field. The girls come into it thinking that it's going to be fun, but in the first few episodes they realize just how hard this training is going to be. The other fun part of the show is how serious it takes itself while being completely ridiculous. The girls, the names, everything is taken dead seriously. And that's part of what makes it funny. The show comes up with ridiculous situations and crazy names, such as the vacuum butt cannon, and it's completely delivered as in totally serious. No one cracks a laugh. No one says, what an incredibly stupid name. No one, they're completely serious. The vacuum butt cannon. It's completely serious, and that's one of the things that just made me crack up. I'm not going to give a full review here, but if you like sports shows and you don't mind a little fan service in it, or if you like fan service and don't mind a little sports in it, it's a surprisingly good show. It has a few messages in there about improving yourself, training hard, taking things seriously, and there's a fair amount of fan service in the show without having to resort to nudity. Another positive thing about the show is it actually has an ending. So few anime these days seem to have a satisfying ending, and this one, although of course they leave it open for more, does have an ending that feels natural and gives you closure. So all in all, not a bad show, not a great show, but if you're looking for something that's just okay, that's got a little bit of an inspirational message, that's ridiculous and funny, and has something pretty to look at, give it a shot. So for next episode, we're going to have a bit of a change in venue. I hear the construction is just about finished. Thanks again, guys.